In mid-2007, the global financial system exploded. Newspaper headlines and television sets across the country resounded with reports of what was soon widely referred to as the subprime mortgage crisis. The abysmal losses of Countrywide Financial and American Home Mortgage became the talk of the town almost overnight. The failure was not of pieces of the system, however, but of the system itself. This was not an unforeseen event. Several days before the reports of crisis burst into the news, economist Lyndon LaRouche delivered an international address signifying the close of the post-FDR global financial and monetary system.
There is no possibility of a non-collapse of the present financial system. None. It's finished now. The present financial system cannot continue to exist under any circumstances, under any presidency, under any leadership, or any leadership of nations. Only a fundamental and sudden change in the world monetary financial system will prevent a general, immediate, chain reaction type of collapse. At what speed, we don't know, but it will go on, and it will be unstoppable. And the longer it goes on before coming to an end, the worse things will get.
In the ensuing period, though the media frenzy had appeared to dissipate, the terror in the financial world did not. Rather than following LaRouche's initiative to break from the failing system and support his Homeowners and Bank Protection Act, federal leaders, under pressure from Wall Street, clung to measures which would only prolong the death throes of the financial system until the end of the year, at the expense of the population. Upon the arrival of the new year, in the aftermath of further unprecedented money-pumping measures taken by central banks around the globe at the behest of City of London financiers, political solutions began to surface left and right. Presidential candidates, elected officials, and economists raced to reveal their stimulus packages, further perpetuating the bailout of the already bankrupt system. On January 17th, 6 months after his assessment of the end of the world financial system, LaRouche again spoke out above the clamor, identifying the full scope and implications of the crisis.
Each day now, since January 3rd, the crisis has been expanding in magnitude at an accelerating rate. What you think is the extent of the crisis today is the measures I propose are not taken will become much worse by an order of magnitude on the next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, until the whole system grinds into a collapse, probably sometime during this year. And I'm talking about a global collapse, not a collapse just of the transatlantic English-speaking community.
And Son, are you on the phone with us?
I am on the phone, Joe, yes.
The following week ended in the last hurrah of the Federal Reserve, a drastic cut in the interest rates, a clear move of utter desperation. LaRouche identified this as the culminating event of a commitment made by the transatlantic English-speaking world toward a new phase of crisis, a chain reaction of global hyperinflationary collapse, comparable to that which struck Germany in 1923, terminating in the fascist regimes of Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. In this presentation, we shall unfold to the viewer the process by which we have come to such a point in history, and how we may rise to the occasion of regaining America's proper role in the world, rather than shrinking into littleness and watching as the great experiment of our founding fathers is relegated to the dustbin of history as the world enters a new dark age. We urge the viewer to watch as if his future depended on it, because in a very real sense, it does. In the second half of the 19th century, a new dynamic was beginning to express itself in the political landscape of the world. Previous to this, the world had been dominated by a system of empires, typified by the British Empire's commitment to thriving off the sheer brute labor power of uneducated, enslaved populations. In the name of free trade, the British East India Company enforced an economic policy devised to maintain the dependence of its colonies upon its control of maritime shipping throughout the world. By flooding foreign markets with cheap goods, they would force other countries to devalue their labor to the point where their only recourse was either the employment of slave labor or the elimination of manufacturing altogether. By these means, Britain's colonies were to forever remain vassals, with the sole purpose of supplying raw materials to the empire.
The British Empire ruled by controlling trade in raw materials. So they would have colonies around the world in which they would loot these colonies. But the colonies were never allowed to develop beyond the level at which they needed to develop to make the looting of their raw materials efficient. So you'd build railroads from the mine to the coast, but you'd never build railroads across the continent to tie the continent together as a whole. That you'd build up certain local aristocracies, but that's for the purposes of providing the political protection for your looting operations. But it's all about looting and extraction. You don't want these things to become nations, because if they become nations, they start to look at these resources as theirs instead of yours. And that's a problem if you're trying to steal them.
In the post-colonial United States Republic, however, there existed a better vision for the future. American system economist and advisor to President Abraham Lincoln, Henry C. Carey, drew a stark contrast when he wrote in 1851,
"Two systems are before the world. One looks to underworking the Hindu and sinking the rest of the world to his level. The other to raising the standard of man throughout the world to our level. One looks to pauperism, ignorance, depopulation, and barbarism. The other to increasing wealth, comfort, intelligence, and civilization. One looks towards universal war, the other towards universal peace. One is the English system, the other we may be proud to call the American system, for it is the only one ever devised, the tendency of which was that of elevating while equalizing the condition of man throughout the world. Such is the true mission of the people of these United States. To raise the value of labor throughout the world, we need only to raise the value of our own."
In 1865, the young nation, the United States of America, under the leadership of President Abraham Lincoln, triumphed over the concerted efforts of the British Empire to break her apart through support of the Confederacy and other means of subversion. The American system, based upon freeing and fostering the creative capacities of mankind, thrived upon a culture of scientific advancement and development of basic economic infrastructure.